My daughter landed a $30 million deal and threw me out on the street telling me, "You don't fit into my life." 20 minutes later, I was metaphorically flying to Dubai without looking back. I never thought my only daughter's success would be my emotional death sentence. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I'd share. And if you, for a second, feel like this sounds familiar, I just ask that you leave a like and subscribe. It'll help me to keep unburdening myself. My name is Carol Martinez. I'm 58 years old, and until 6 months ago, I was living in a luxury apartment on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. Not because it was mine, but because my daughter, Sophia, had allowed me to, after she became the youngest founder of a tech app valued in the millions. That morning, March 15th, I got up at 5:30, like always. My knees cracked as I lowered myself from the twin bed Sophia had placed in what used to be her playroom. "It's more appropriate for your age, Mom," she had told me 6 months ago when she moved into the 25th floor penthouse and relegated me to the service room on the 12th floor. I put on the cotton robe I had hand-washed the night before. My slippers, bought at a flea market in Queens, contrasted sharply with the Italian marble floors. I walked down the hallway in silence, as I had grown accustomed to doing. Sophia hated morning noises. "They interrupt my creative process," she'd say. I prepared coffee in the machine she had bought for guests. I drank cheap instant coffee from a chipped mug I'd brought from our old apartment in Queens. The aroma of gourmet coffee reminded me every morning that I owned nothing in this house. I was just the mother who was in the way. My cell phone vibrated on the granite countertop. A voicemail from Sophia. Strange. She usually sent texts. Very formal, as if we were distant acquaintances. I pressed play with a trembling finger. Her voice sounded different. Cold. Calculated. "Mom, I've spoken to my lawyers. The apartment is entirely in my name. I need you to leave. Today. The movers will be there at 3. I've wired you $500. It's enough for you to get settled somewhere else. It's not personal. It's just, you don't fit into my new life." The phone slipped from my hands, hitting the tiles with a sharp crack that echoed through the empty apartment. I stood there, motionless, the steaming coffee mug clutched in my wrinkled fingers. The tears came slowly, like when I was a child and my mother would scold me for accidentally breaking something. It wasn't the first time Sophia had hurt me, but it was the first time she had banished me. I remembered that day, 23 years ago, when I sat on a bed in Elmhurst Hospital, holding her for the first time. Her little eyes were closed and her fists were clenched, as if she were already fighting the world. Her father, Richard, had disappeared 2 months earlier when he found out she was on the way. "I'm not ready to be a dad," he'd said, and left with a secretary from his office who fit into his career plans. From that day on, it was just her and me against everything. Me, cleaning offices in Midtown Manhattan at night, selling hot dogs from a cart near Grand Central in the mornings, ironing other people's clothes in the afternoons, all so Sophia could have what I never had. Education, opportunities, a bright future. I paid for her English tutoring from the age of 5. I bought her first computer by selling my gold First Communion necklace. When she was 16 and told me she wanted to study coding in a private course that cost 2 months of my salary, I sold my mother's sewing machine, the same one I had dreamed of using to open my own tailor shop someday. Sophia never thanked me. "It's your duty, Mom. Parents are supposed to sacrifice for their kids. That's normal." At 21, she created her first app. At 23, she became a millionaire. At 25, she was on the cover of Forbes as the tech genius who came from nothing. From nothing. As if I hadn't existed. As if my sleepless nights, my tears, my hands chapped by detergent hadn't been the foundation of her success. That day, at the award ceremony at the Four Seasons Hotel, I had arrived in a navy blue dress that my neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, had lent me. Sophia wore a white pantsuit that cost more than I earned in 3 months. When she saw me arrive, she frowned. "Mom, sit in the back. I don't want the investors to think I come from a, you know." I sat in the last row, among the waiters waiting to serve dinner. From there, I watched her receive her award, smiling for the cameras, thanking fate for giving her the strength to get ahead on her own. Alone. When the ceremony ended, I approached her with a bouquet of white roses I'd bought with the last few dollars in my wallet. She was surrounded by men in expensive suits and women with bags that cost more than my annual rent. "I brought you flowers, sweetie," I said, holding out the bouquet. Sophia looked at me as if I were a street vendor bothering her. "And why did you bring me flowers, Mom? This isn't your day. The award is mine. Don't get any ideas. You won't fit into my new life." The executives around her fell silent, uncomfortable. One of them cleared his throat and went to the restroom. Sophia took the flowers without looking at me and handed them to the nearest waiter. "You can toss these," she said. I just stood there, with empty hands and a heart broken into a million pieces. That night, in the cab back to the apartment, I cried silently as I watched the city lights blur past the window. The driver, an older man with a graying mustache, looked at me in the rearview mirror. "You okay, ma'am?" "Yes," I lied. "It's just that sometimes success changes people." "Success doesn't change anyone, ma'am," he replied. "It just brings out what was already inside them." His words hurt more than anything Sophia had said that night. Now, 6 months later, my hands still shaking from her voicemail, I realized he was right. My daughter hadn't become cruel because of the money. She always had been. I had just refused to see it. I sat on the cold marble floor for I don't know how many hours, my back against the kitchen island. The apartment seemed bigger now, as if the walls had expanded to remind me how small I was in my own daughter's life. Every shiny surface reflected my image, a 58-year-old woman in a faded robe, with messy gray hair and eyes swollen from crying. The $500 had arrived in my account with a reference that shattered my soul. Final settlement. C. Martinez. As if I were just another employee whose contract had ended. She hadn't even written Mom in the transfer details. I walked to my room, that 10 by 10 foot space that had been my world for the last few months. I opened the closet where my clothes hung, 5 dresses, 3 blouses, 2 pairs of pants, and the black coat I'd bought at JCPenney 10 years ago for my mother's funeral. On the top shelf was a cardboard box with photographs. I took it down carefully, as if they were sacred relics. It was all there. Sophia at 3, in a yellow dress I had stayed up all night sewing by hand, smiling toothlessly after losing her first baby tooth. Sophia at 7, the day she won the school math competition, holding a trophy bigger than her. I was in the background, in the blue uniform of the cleaning company where I worked, because I had run straight from the offices in the financial district to make it to the ceremony on time. Sophia at 12, on her middle school graduation day. I had saved for 8 months to buy her the white dress she wanted, the same one the daughter of the stationery store owner wore. "I want to look like a rich girl, Mom," she had told me. And I, fool that I was, thought that if she looked like a rich girl, one day she would be one and would love me more for giving her that chance. I remembered that December night when she was 14. She had come home from school crying because her classmates had made fun of her shoes. They were good shoes, leather, but I'd bought them at a discount store and you could tell they weren't brand name. That same night, after she fell asleep, I went out and sold my wedding ring, which I had kept all those years, just in case. With that money, I bought her a pair of Nikes she had seen in a window at Macy's. When I gave them to her the next day, she didn't hug me. She didn't say thank you. She just said, "It's about time, Mom. I can't walk around looking like a charity case." A charity case. That word hurt me then, but I justified it as teenage frustration. Now I understand that even then, I wasn't her mother. I was her personal provider. I kept looking through the photos. Her sweet 16 party. I had worked double shifts for a whole year to pay for the party she wanted. A hall in a nice part of town, a dress from a boutique, a live band, 300 guests. In the pictures, she looks radiant, like a princess. I appear in only one photo, serving cake in the background, with my apron on because I had been helping in the kitchen all night. Her 18th birthday, when I gave her a trip to Miami with her friends. I sold the television, the old refrigerator, and even the gold earrings my mother had given me on her deathbed. "But all my friends are going, Mom. I can't be the only poor one in the group." Her college graduation, a degree in computer engineering from NYU. I had worked as a cleaner at that same university for 4 years to get the 50% scholarship we needed. Every morning, I arrived at 5 to mop the hallways my daughter would walk down 3 hours later as a student. Some of her classmates saw me cleaning their classrooms, but Sophia told them I was just a woman she knew. On her graduation day, I was in the front row. I had taken the day off and worn my best dress, a navy blue one I'd found at a garage sale. When they called her name, I shouted with joy. She turned towards me with a look of embarrassment that froze my blood. After the ceremony, as her classmates took pictures with their families, a young man with the last name Prescott approached to congratulate her. His parents owned a chain of department stores. "Is that your mom, Sophia?" the boy asked, pointing at me. "Yes, but she didn't have the chance to get an education," my daughter replied, as if apologizing. "We come from very difficult circumstances. Difficult circumstances. As if I were a circumstance to be ashamed of. As if my calloused hands and my back, hunched from so much cleaning, hadn't built every brick of her success." That night, when we got home, I made her favorite meal, lasagna, from scratch. I had learned to make it by watching YouTube videos on my coworkers' phones. It took me 5 hours, simmering the sauce just right. Sophia ate in silence, scrolling through her phone. When she finished, she stood up without clearing her plate. "Mom, I need to tell you something," she said without looking at me. "I already have job offers. Big companies. But to grow in that world, I need to project an image, a successful image. Of course, sweetie. You have to dress well, speak well. No, Mom, it's not just about me. It's about my environment, the people around me, the house I live in, the car I drive, the family I have." There it was. The family I have. I was the problem. "I understand," I said, though I understood nothing. "What do you need me to do?" "I need you to give me space. Don't show up at important events. When people come to the house, stay in your room. Don't talk about your job with my contacts." I stayed silent, nodding like a scolded child. "And what if I have kids one day?" she continued. "How am I going to explain to them that their grandmother was a cleaning lady? How will my employees respect me if they know I come from this, from me, from my sacrifices, from my unconditional love? I was this. Something to be hidden." That night, I cried until I had no tears left. The next day, I began to slowly disappear from her life. When her friends came over, I would lock myself in my room with the TV on mute. When they went out to dinner, I would eat the leftovers from the fridge alone. When she bought new clothes, I kept wearing the same clothes from years ago so as not to clash with her new image of success. And the worst part? I started to believe she was right. That I was the obstacle between her and her happiness. That my love was a burden. That my sacrifices were a shame to be hidden. But there, sitting on the floor of that apartment that was never mine, holding the photographs of a life I built with my own hands, I realized something terrible. I had raised a stranger. A beautiful, successful, and cruel stranger who carried my last name, but not my heart. The daughter I had loved never existed. There was only the girl I had imagined while I worked 3 shifts a day to give her everything she wanted. 3 days after the voicemail, I was still in the same apartment. The movers never came. Neither did Sophia. The silence was so thick you could cut it with a knife. I woke up that morning with a foolish hope. Maybe she'd had a change of heart. Maybe it was just a spoiled rich girl's tantrum. But when I checked my phone, I found another message. A text this time. Cold as January ice on the Hudson River. "Carol, don't use Mom when you write to me. I've deposited another $300. Find a place. Don't make me call building security." Carol. Not even Mom. As if we were neighbors who barely greeted each other in the elevator. That day, I decided to go out for the first time in weeks. I put on my least wrinkled dress and went down to the bodega on the corner. The cashier, a young woman of about 25 with acrylic nails and bleached blonde hair, greeted me as always. "How are you, Mrs. Martinez? And your daughter? I don't see her around here anymore." "She's very busy," I lied, forcing a smile. "You know how these successful young women are. You must be so proud," she said, scanning my bottle of water and a pastry. "To have a daughter that famous." I saw her interview on the local news. So smart. Famous. My daughter was famous, and I was buying a pastry with the last few dollars I had. The irony hit me like a punch to the gut. I returned to the apartment and sat in the empty living room. Everything was white. The sofas, the tables, the curtains, even the planters were white. A decorator had come 6 months ago to modernize the space, according to Sophia. It cost her over $20,000 to make everything look like a luxury hospital. "It's minimalist, Mom," she had explained as workers installed light fixtures that cost more than my annual salary. "Successful people live like this. Simple, elegant." I had stored all my colorful things in my room. The hand-knitted Afghan my mother had made for me. The cast-iron skillet my grandmother had left me, which I used for Sunday pancakes. My small radio, where I listened to the news and old Elvis Presley songs. Everything that reminded me of who I was before I became a ghost in my own daughter's life. The phone rang. My heart leaped, thinking it was Sophia. It was Mrs. Diaz, my old neighbor from Queens where we used to live, a 70-year-old woman who had watched me grow up since I arrived in that neighborhood, pregnant and alone, 23 years ago. "Carol, sweetie, how are you? I haven't heard from you since you went to live with your rich daughter." Rich? Everyone thought I was rich now too, that I shared in Sophia's fortune, that I was living like a queen after so many years of hard work. "I'm fine, Mrs. Diaz. Everything's fine." "Oh, honey, don't lie to me. I know the sound of your voice when you're sad." "What's wrong?" I broke down. I told her everything, every humiliation, every slight. Every night I had eaten dinner alone while Sophia went to expensive restaurants with her new friends. I told her about the eviction message and the $500 she had given me like it was charity. "You come here, Carol," she said, with that motherly voice I had missed so much. "You have a home here. Always." "I can't, Mrs. Diaz. I don't belong in that world anymore. I don't even know who I am. You are Carol Martinez, the woman who raised a daughter on her own, the one who worked day and night to give her a better life, the one who never gave up. That's who you are, not what she says you are." I hung up crying, but for the first time in months, they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage. That night, as I was making tea in the stainless steel kitchen that looked like it belonged in a 5-star restaurant, I remembered my last birthday, October 23rd. I had turned 58. I woke up that morning hoping Sophia would wish me a happy birthday. I waited all day. A call, a text, a hug, nothing. At 10 o'clock at night, when I had lost all hope, she appeared in the kitchen. "Oh, Mom, it was your birthday today, right?" "Yes, sweetie. Sorry. I was super busy with the Japanese investors. You know how it is." She went to her room. I stood there by the refrigerator, feeling like the most invisible person in the world. Not even a hug. Not even a sincere happy birthday. The next day, she had given me a blender. An expensive blender, but a blender nonetheless. As if I were the maid who needed better tools for her job. "So you can make nutritious smoothies, Mom. At your age, you have to take care of yourself. At my age." As if I were a decrepit old woman who needed medical supervision. But the worst part wasn't the forgotten birthdays or the utilitarian gifts. The worst part was the day I got sick. It had been in January, right after New Year's. A bad flu that had me in bed with a fever for 4 days. Sophia was home because of the holidays at her company. During those 4 days, she didn't come up once to ask how I was. Not a cup of tea, not an aspirin, not a word of comfort. I would cough all night with a 102-degree fever, and she would play music in her room so she wouldn't hear my groans. On the 4th day, when I could finally make it down to the kitchen, I found her eating avocado toast she had ordered from an app. "Mom, good to see you're better. I just don't like being around sick people. My immune system is very delicate. A cold could cost me thousands in private medical bills." Her immune system, my 4 days of agony alone in that twin bed, delirious with fever, had been just an inconvenience for her delicate immune system. "Besides," she continued, not looking at me, "you're old enough to take care of yourself. I can't be looking after you as if you were a child." As if I were a child. The same child who had taken care of her for 18 years when she got sick. The one who stayed up all night taking her temperature every 2 hours. The one who missed work to take her to the doctor when she had a fever. The one who spoon-fed her when she didn't even have the strength to chew. Thinking about it now, that flu was the moment something broke inside me for good. It was when I understood that to my daughter, I wasn't a mother. I was a burden, an obstacle, an inherited responsibility to be tolerated, but not loved. I sat on the white living room sofa, my tea steaming in a mug that cost more than a week of my meals. And for the first time in 23 years, I asked myself a terrible question. Why was I still here? Why was I still putting up with it? What was keeping me tied to this life of constant humiliation? The answer came as a whisper in my head. Fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of having nowhere to go. Fear of admitting I had failed as a mother. Fear of acknowledging that the child I had given everything to had become a cruel stranger who hated me for loving her too much. But that night, for the first time in years, the fear began to morph into something more dangerous. Dignity. A dignity I had buried under tons of unrequited love and unappreciated sacrifices. I got up from the sofa and walked to the window overlooking the city. The lights of Manhattan glittered like diamonds on black velvet. All that beauty, all that abundance, and I felt poorer than when I lived in a small apartment in Queens. I picked up my phone and typed a message I never sent. Sophia, I am your mother, the woman who gave you life, the one who sacrificed everything for you, and I deserve respect. I deleted it, wrote it again, deleted it again. In the end, I sent nothing, but a seed had been planted, a small but powerful seed that would begin to grow in the days to come. The seed of a woman who was tired of being invisible. The next morning, I woke to a sound I hadn't heard in months. Laughter. Loud, cheerful laughter coming from the living room. I peeked out of my room and saw Sophia having breakfast with 3 people I didn't know. 2 men in expensive suits and a blonde woman with a Louis Vuitton bag on the glass table. Sophia was wearing a pale pink dress that I didn't recognize until I realized. It was the dress I had worn to her college graduation. The one I'd bought at a garage sale for $20 and had tailored at the local dry cleaner. But now it looked different, as if it had been altered by an expert designer. Carol, she called out without looking at me, bring us more coffee. And serve it in the good cups, not the ones you use. The ones I use. As if there were first-class and second-class cups in the same house. I froze in the doorway, processing that she had spoken to me like a maid in front of her guests. Carol, she repeated, this time turning to me with a forced smile. My partners are waiting. Partners. She hadn't introduced me as her mother. She hadn't even explained who I was. Just Carol, the invisible woman who serves coffee. I walked to the kitchen with trembling legs. As I prepared the Italian coffee maker that cost more than my monthly rent in Queens, I overheard bits of their conversation. The app is going to revolutionize the U.S. market, Sophia was saying with that confident voice I knew so well. We're projecting expansion into Canada and the UK by the end of the year. And your personal story? Asked the blonde woman. Investors love a story of overcoming adversity, especially from women who came from poverty. Well, Sophia replied, my mother died when I was 12. My father abandoned us before I was born. I basically grew up on my own, at a neighbor's house who took care of me in exchange for me helping with chores. My world collapsed. The coffee maker slipped from my hands and crashed to the floor with a deafening clatter. Boiling coffee splattered across the Italian tiles like my own blood. My mother died when I was 12. Sophia had killed me. She had killed me in front of 3 strangers to make her story sound more dramatic, more marketable, more appealing to investors. Carol! Sophia yelled from the living room. Be more careful! I bent down to pick up the pieces of hot metal, and my tears fell, mixing with the spilled coffee. My hands were bleeding from cuts from the broken machine, but the physical pain was nothing compared to what I felt in my chest. I was dead. To my own daughter, I was dead. When I returned to the living room with a tray of mismatched cups, the only ones I could find after the accident, the conversation had changed. Sophia was just telling us about her childhood. One of the men, about 50 with gold-rimmed glasses, said to me, what an inspiring story. To be orphaned so young and still achieve so much. Yes, the blonde woman added. It reminds me of my own story. I also lost my mother very young. I lost my mother. And there I was, standing in front of them, serving coffee with bleeding hands, as they discussed my death as if it were a fact. "Thank you, Carol," Sophia said as I placed the cups on the table. "You can go now. We have a private meeting. Go now." As if I were the maid whose shift had ended, I went to my room and closed the door. I sat on the twin bed and tried to process what had just happened. My daughter had erased me from her story. She hadn't just hidden me or downplayed my role. She had killed me, literally. For her, it was easier to be an orphan than to have a mother like me. I picked up my phone and dialed the number of my sister, Rose, who lived in Philadelphia. We hadn't spoken in 2 years, not since I moved in with Sophia and stopped going to family gatherings. "Carol? Is that you?" she answered, surprised. "I thought we didn't exist for you anymore. Rose, I need to ask you something. Do you know if I did something wrong raising Sophia? Was I a bad mother?" She was quiet for a few seconds. Then she sighed deeply. "Oh, Carol, you were the best mother that girl could have ever had. You gave her everything. Too much, I'd say. You spoiled her so much she never learned to appreciate what she had. But it must be my fault. I must not have taught her." "Carol Martinez," she interrupted with that firm voice she used when we were kids, and I threw tantrums. "Stop blaming yourself. That girl came out of the factory defective. She was always like that. Have you already forgotten when she was 8 and broke her cousin Lucy's favorite toy just because it was prettier than hers? Or when she was 15 and told us all we were low-class people who embarrassed her?" I remembered those moments. I had justified them as childish mischief, teenage angst. I never wanted to see the pattern. "You killed yourself working for that girl," Rose continued. "And she never once said thank you. Not once. When was the last time she said, 'Thanks, Mom'? When was the last time she hugged you without you asking first?" I couldn't remember. I literally could not remember the last time my daughter had hugged me of her own free will. "Come here to Philly, Carol. Stay with us. You have family here who actually loves you." "I can't, Rose. I can't leave my daughter." "Your daughter? What daughter? The one who's treating you like a servant? The one who has you hidden away like you're her dirty little secret? That's not your daughter, Carol. That's a cruel stranger with your last name." I hung up without saying goodbye. Rose's words echoed in my head like funeral bells. She was right. I knew it. But admitting it meant accepting that I had wasted 23 years of my life, loving someone who had never loved me back. That afternoon, after her partners left, Sophia came into my room without knocking. She was holding a plastic bag. "Here," she said, tossing the bag onto my bed. "I bought you some aspirin for the cuts. And a first aid manual. You can't be hurting yourself in the kitchen when I have important guests." I opened the bag. CVS brand aspirin and a cheap first aid booklet that cost a couple of dollars. She hadn't even bothered to buy decent bandages. "Sophia," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I need to ask you something. Make it quick. I have a video conference with Singapore in 10 minutes. Why did you tell those people that I had died?" She fell silent. For a moment, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Guilt? Shame? But it vanished so quickly I thought I'd imagined it. "I didn't tell them you had died," she replied coldly. "I told them my mother died. It's different. I am your mother. Biologically, yes. But a mother is someone who prepares you for the real world. Someone who teaches you to be strong, successful, respectable. You only taught me to settle for scraps. Scraps. The same scraps I had worked day and night to turn into a full meal for her. You taught me it was okay to be poor," she continued. "That it was okay to dress from thrift stores. That it was okay to have no ambition. A real mother would have taught me to want more, to demand more, to not settle for being just another girl from Queens. Just another girl from Queens. That's what I was to her. That's what all women like me who had sacrificed everything for our children were. So yes," she went on, "for all practical purposes, my real mother died a long time ago, and a successful woman who owes nothing to anyone was born." She turned to leave, but stopped at the door. "Oh, and Carol," she said without turning around, "tomorrow I need you to be out of the apartment in the afternoon. Forbes is coming for a photo shoot. For the cover of the special issue on successful women. You don't want me to be here when they take your picture? Absolutely not. You don't fit into that image." She closed the door, and I was left alone, holding the cheap aspirin she had bought me as if it were a supreme act of charity. I couldn't sleep that night. I stayed awake until dawn, watching the city lights that never go out. And for the first time in 23 years, I wondered what would have happened if I had made different choices. If I had married Aurelio, the mechanic who courted me when Sophia was 5. If I had accepted the job in Chicago that I was offered when she turned 18. If I had lived for myself, even just a little. But it was too late for those questions. Or maybe it wasn't. The next day, while Sophia was getting ready for her Forbes photo shoot, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went for a walk through the city with no destination. I needed air. I needed to think. Far from those white walls that felt like a mausoleum. I walked down Madison Avenue, looking at the luxury shops where a single purse cost more than what I earned in 3 months. I passed by Saks Fifth Avenue, where Sophia bought her executive suits, and stopped in front of the window. A mannequin was wearing a dress I recognized immediately. The same one Sophia had worn last week to a business dinner. $450. What I earned in 2 months cleaning houses. I sat on a bench in Central Park and watched people pass by. Entire families walking together, laughing. Mothers holding their babies with that look of unconditional love I knew so well. Teenagers sharing ice cream with their moms, without shame, without hiding them like a dirty secret. An older woman sat down next to me. She had perfectly coiffed white hair and wore a hand-knitted sweater that reminded me of the ones my mother used to make. "Excuse me," she said in a kind voice. "Are you all right? You look so sad." I don't know why, but I told her everything. I told the stranger about the eviction message, about the broken coffee maker, about being declared dead in front of investors. I told her about 23 years of sacrifices that had turned into 23 years of humiliation. "Oh, sweetie," she said when I finished speaking, "do you know how many women I've met with the same story? Ungrateful children who think parents owe them everything and they owe us nothing." Her name was Eleanor Vance. She was 72, and she had gone through something similar with her eldest son. "I gave him everything too," she told me. "I worked as a secretary for 30 years to pay for his medical school. When he graduated and opened his own practice, he told me I couldn't live with him anymore because he needed to project a professional image. He sent me to live with my younger sister. And what did you do? What you should do, sweetie. I found my own life. I learned how to use a computer at 60. I started a small accounting business for family-owned shops. Now I have my own apartment, my own friends, my own plans. And your son? Oh, well, when he realized I was no longer available to babysit his kids for free on weekends, when he found out I wouldn't be doing his laundry or cooking for him when his wife traveled for work, then he remembered he had a mother." I was silent, processing her words. "But it was too late," Eleanor continued, "because I had learned something very important. Self-respect is non-negotiable, and children who blackmail you with their affection never really loved you in the first place." I returned to the apartment with those words ringing in my head. Sophia hadn't come back from her photo shoot yet. I went into my room, and for the first time in months, I really looked at myself in the vanity mirror that had belonged to my mother. What I saw scared me. A 58-year-old woman who looked 70, gray, unkempt hair, dull skin, lifeless eyes, clothes that were too big for me because I'd lost weight from eating so little. I looked like a ghost of myself. When had I stopped caring about my appearance? When had I accepted becoming invisible? I opened the drawer where I kept my few savings. I had exactly $830. My emergency fund in case something happened to Sophia. Money I had saved dollar by dollar over the years, denying myself small pleasures to be prepared if my daughter needed me. My daughter, who had declared me dead. I took $400 and left the apartment. I went straight to the beauty salon on the ground floor of the building, an elegant place I had never entered because it wasn't for people like me. "How can I help you, ma'am?" the receptionist asked, a young woman of about 25 with a modern haircut and perfect nails. "I want a complete makeover," I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. 3 hours later, I walked out of the salon feeling like a new person. My gray hair had been cut into a modern style and dyed a soft brown that took 10 years off me. They had given me a manicure, a pedicure, and even subtle makeup that highlighted my eyes. The girl at the salon, whose name was Kayla, had told me while she was working on me that she also had problems with her family. My mom always told me I was her investment, she'd said. That because she paid for my cosmetology school, I owed it to her to support her for the rest of her life. Until one day I realized that wasn't love. It was blackmail. How did you break free? I set boundaries. I told her, Mom, I'll help you with what I can, but I'm not going to live just to give you money. She was furious. She stopped talking to me for 6 months, but eventually she came back, and our relationship is much healthier now. Boundaries. A word I didn't know existed in the vocabulary of mothers like me. When I got to the apartment, Sophia was already home. I heard her on the phone in the living room, probably with a client or investor. I walked past her to go to my room. Carol? She shouted, hanging up the phone. Is that you? I turned around. Her face was a picture. Surprise, confusion, and something I hadn't seen in years. She was actually seeing me. Yes, it's me. You look different. I feel different. She was quiet for a few seconds, studying me as if I were a puzzle she couldn't solve. And may I ask why you spent money on that nonsense? I thought you were short on cash. Nonsense. To her, me looking good was nonsense. I decided to invest in myself, I replied, using the same words she used when she bought expensive clothes. To project a better image. You look ridiculous, she said with a cruel smile. Like some old woman trying to look young. It's pathetic. But for the first time, her words didn't hurt like before. It was as if the physical change had created an emotional armor I didn't know I had. How was your photo shoot? I asked, changing the subject. Perfect. They're going to use 3 photos for the cover. The title is The CEO of the Year, From Rags to Riches. From Rags to Riches. As if poverty were something she had escaped on her own, without anyone's help. And did you mention in the interview how you managed to get out of poverty? Of course. I told them about my adoptive mother, the neighbor who took care of me after I was orphaned, a very hard-working woman who taught me the value of effort. My adoptive mother. Now I was her adoptive mother. I wasn't even her dead biological mother anymore. I was a charitable neighbor who had taken care of an orphan. And what's the name of this wonderful adoptive mother? I asked. Carmen Esperanza, she replied without blinking. Same as you. What a coincidence, right? She had even stolen my name. She had taken my entire identity and turned it into a fictional character for her success story. That night, after Sophia went to bed, I stayed up in the kitchen, drinking tea and thinking about everything that had happened. On my laptop was the Forbes article that had just gone online. The cover photo showed Sophia smiling confidently, dressed in a white suit that made her look powerful and unattainable. The headline read, Sophia Martinez, the tech genius who turned pain into power. I read the entire interview. Every paragraph was a stab in the back. She talked about Carmen Esperanza, the heroic neighbor who had raised her after she lost her parents. She described a childhood of hardship, but filled with values, where this selfless woman had taught her that hard work was the only way to get ahead. Carmen Esperanza taught me that it doesn't matter where you come from, but where you're going, read a pull quote in the article. She sacrificed everything to give me opportunities. Her death, when I was 18, was the most difficult moment of my life, but it also motivated me to never give up. Her death when she was 18, now she'd changed the age. She had killed me right when she graduated high school, just as she was starting college, just when I was working my hardest to pay for her education. At the end of the article, there was a sentence that took my breath away. I dedicate all my success to the memory of Carmen Esperanza, the woman who taught me to fly before she was gone forever. Taught me to fly before she was gone forever. I closed the laptop and sat there, in the kitchen lit only by the glow of the refrigerator. For the first time in 23 years, I felt something I had never felt before. Contempt for my own daughter. Not sadness, not disappointment. Pure contempt. And with that contempt came something I didn't expect. Liberation. If I was dead in her story, then I no longer owed anything to an orphan. If I was just a fictional character in her success narrative, then the real Carol could make her own decisions. For the first time in decades, I smiled a smile that was all my own. 3 days after the Forbes article, I decided to do something I hadn't done in years. Cook for myself. Not for Sophia. Not for guests. For me. I went down to the gourmet market in the building and bought ingredients to make my favorite dish. A slow-cooked beef brisket, the way my grandmother had taught me when I was 12. I spent $50 on the meat, vegetables, and spices. Money I would have felt guilty spending before, but now felt like an investment in my own happiness. If I was dead to Sophia, then I could afford to enjoy my last few dollars however I wanted. I spent the whole morning in the kitchen, searing the meat in the fancy Dutch oven Sophia had bought to impress guests but never used. The aroma filled the entire apartment. Rosemary, garlic, thyme, slow-cooked onions, the smell of my childhood, of Sunday family dinners, of a time when being poor wasn't a shame but a circumstance you faced with dignity. Sophia came home from work at noon and stood in the kitchen doorway, sniffing the air like a confused animal. "What is that strong smell?" she asked with disgust. "The whole house smells like peasant food." Peasant food. The brisket that had taken 4 hours of my life to prepare was peasant food. "It's brisket," I replied without looking at her. "The kind you used to like when you were a kid." "I never liked that," she lied shamelessly. "That heavy food gives me heartburn. Besides, don't you think it's a little inappropriate to be cooking those ethnic dishes when investors might drop by unannounced?" Ethnic dishes. My culinary heritage, my grandmother's recipes passed down through generations, was now an ethnic dish, inappropriate for her corporate image. "I'm not cooking for investors," I said, serving myself a generous plate. "I'm cooking for me." "For you?" She laughed with that sound she had perfected for executive meetings, a fake, sharp laugh. "And since when do you treat yourself to such luxuries? I thought you were short on money to move out." I sat at the dining room table, the same table where I had eaten alone for months while she dined at expensive restaurants. I took the first bite of brisket and closed my eyes. It tasted like memories, like Sundays with my mother, like a time when being who I was wasn't a source of shame. "Carol," Sophia said, sitting across from me with the rigid posture she used in important video calls. "We need to talk." "I'm listening." "I've been thinking about your situation, and I think I've found a solution that works for both of us." I took out my phone and hit record. Something told me I would need proof of this conversation. My assistant told me about a very nice retirement home out on Long Island. It's called Golden Sunset. It has gardens, activities for senior citizens, 24-hour nursing care. A retirement home. She wanted to put me in a retirement home at 58 years old. "I'm not sick, Sophia. I don't need nursing care. But you need specialized care. You're not young enough to live alone anymore. And I need my space to grow professionally." "Specialized care? Until 3 days ago, I was the one who cooked for you. Did your laundry? Cleaned your apartment?" "Exactly," she interrupted. "You can't do those things properly anymore. Yesterday you burned the toast. Last week you broke the Italian coffee maker. Your motor skills are failing." I burned the toast because I was crying while making it after she yelled at me for breathing too loudly during her video conference. I broke the coffee maker because I was shaking with shock after hearing her declare me dead. "The monthly cost is $800, she continued, as if presenting a business proposal. "It's very reasonable for the quality of service. You'd have your own room, 3 meals a day, and company of people your own age. And who is going to pay that $800 a month? Well, obviously I can't take on that expense. My investments are tied up in the company's growth, but you could apply for government assistance, or maybe work part-time in something simple." She wanted to put me in a home that I would have to pay for myself by working at 58 to finance my own exile. And if I refuse? "Carol," she sighed as if talking to a stubborn child, "you can't stay here forever. This apartment is a business asset. I need it to host international clients, to hold business dinners. Your presence complicates things. My 23 years of taking care of you also complicated things. My double shifts paying for your education also complicated things. That's enough," she yelled, slamming her palm on the table. "I'm sick of you throwing everything you did for me in my face. It was your obligation. Parents have an obligation to provide for their children, and children don't have an obligation to respect their parents? Successful children have an obligation to protect their assets and their image. And you, I'm sorry to say, are a risk to both. A risk. After 23 years of sacrifice, I was a business risk. I got up from the table, went to my room, and pulled out the box of photographs I had hidden under the bed. I returned to the living room where Sophia was still sitting, checking her phone as if the conversation was over. I placed the box on the glass table with a thud that made her look up. "What is that?" "Your childhood," I said, opening the box. "The real one, not the one you told Forbes about." I took out the first photo. Sophia at 5, on my lap, both of us smiling in Central Park. I was wearing my work uniform because we had gone after I finished cleaning offices. "Here you are with your biological mother," I said. "The one who supposedly died when you were 12. I took out another photo. Her 6th birthday, in our tiny apartment in Queens. A plastic table with a chocolate cake I had made, decorated with the Little Mermaid figurines I'd bought at a street market. "Here is your adoptive mother, the kind neighbor," I continued, "celebrating your birthday in the poverty you supposedly escaped on your own." Photo by photo, I reconstructed the truth she had decided to erase. Her middle school graduation, where I stood proudly in the front row. Her first day of high school, in the uniform that cost me 2 weeks' salary. Her Sweet 16 party, where I was serving food to her guests because we couldn't afford to hire waiters. "Stop," she said, her voice cracking in a way I hadn't heard since she was a little girl. "No," I replied, pulling out more photos. "I want you to see the woman who died in your story. I want you to see everything she did for you before she so conveniently disappeared from your success narrative." I got to the photo that hurt the most. Sophia at 18, on her high school graduation day, hugging me with tears in her eyes. "Thanks, Mom," she had written on the back in her teenage script, "for never giving up on me. One day I'm going to give you the life you deserve." I turned the photo over so she could read her own handwriting. "This was 3 days before you killed me in your story," I said. 3 days before I officially ceased to exist in your life." Sophia was silent, staring at the photograph as if it were a foreign object she couldn't identify. "Things change," she whispered. "People grow. They evolve. People grow," I repeated. "Monsters evolve." She shot up from her chair so fast it fell backward. "Don't talk to me like that. I'm your daughter." "My daughter?" I stood up too, clutching the box of photos to my chest. "My daughter died years ago. You're just a stranger living in her body and using her name. You're crazy. Completely insane. You know what's really driving me crazy, Sophia? It's not that you threw me out of your life. It's that you made me believe I deserved it." I walked to the front door of the apartment and turned back one last time. "I'll be back for my things on Monday. And after that, you can tell whoever you want that Carmen Esperanza is dead. Because to me, you no longer exist." I closed the door behind me, and for the first time in years, I didn't wait for her to yell for me to come back. Because I had finally understood something Eleanor had told me in the park. Self-respect is non-negotiable, and I had just declared my emotional independence. That night I slept at the home of Eleanor Vance, the woman I had met in Central Park. When I told her on the phone what had happened, she didn't hesitate for a second to offer me her couch. "You come right over, sweetie. Tonight, we celebrate your freedom." Her apartment in the West Village was small but full of life. Plants in every corner, photos of trips she had taken alone after she turned 60, books stacked on makeshift tables. The walls were painted in warm colors: soft orange, buttery yellow, olive green, the complete opposite of the white mausoleum on the Upper East Side. "See this picture?" she asked, pointing to an image of her smiling in front of the Grand Canyon. "I took that last year when I turned 71. It was my first solo trip in my entire life. Weren't you scared?" "Terrified," she laughed. "But you know what I discovered? Fear and excitement are the same sensation. The only difference is how you choose to interpret it." That first night at Eleanor's, I couldn't sleep, but it wasn't the usual anxiety. It was something different, as if my body was adjusting to a new reality where I mattered, where my decisions had weight, where my future was my own. The next day, Eleanor accompanied me to see an apartment in Astoria, Queens. It was small: 1 bedroom, a living dining area, a kitchenette, and a small balcony overlooking a park where grandmothers brought their grandchildren to play. The rent was $1,800 a month, Exactly what I had left in my savings. "What do you think?" asked the woman, showing me the place. Her name was Gloria, and she was about my age. "It's a quiet building. Just working-class families." Working-class families. For the first time in years, that phrase didn't sound like an apology, but like an honor. "I'll take it," I said, surprising myself. "Really?" Eleanor asked, as excited as if it were her own decision. "You've made up your mind?" "I've made up my mind." I signed the lease that same afternoon. Gloria asked for a security deposit and the first month's rent up front. $3,600, which I paid with the money I had saved for Sophia's emergencies. For the first time, I was my own emergency. On Monday, I returned to the Upper East Side apartment to pick up my things. Sophia wasn't there. She had left a note on the kitchen table. "Carol, I'll be out all day. Your boxes are by the entrance. Please leave the keys with the front desk." My boxes. She had packed all my belongings in cardboard boxes from the supermarket, as if it were trash to be taken out quickly before it started to smell. I opened the first box. There were my clothes, wrinkled and poorly folded, mixed in with cleaning supplies as if there were no difference between my clothes and the products for cleaning the bathroom. In the second box, she had put my family photos next to rolls of toilet paper, as if my memories had the same value as hygiene products. But instead of pain, I felt something unexpected. Laughter. A deep, liberating laugh that came from a place in my soul that had been closed for decades. I laughed so hard that tears streamed down my face. But this time, they were tears of relief. How had I allowed this person to make me feel so insignificant for so long? How had I accepted that my value as a human being depended on her approval? I repacked my things in new boxes I had bought, carefully, with affection for myself. Every object I packed was a declaration. This belongs to me. This has value, because it is mine. When I finished, I wrote my own note and left it where hers had been. "Sophia, thank you for helping me understand that not all children are blessings. Some are lessons. Lesson learned, Carol Martinez." I didn't write Mom. I didn't write "with love," just my full name, the one I had seen on my birth certificate and hadn't used with pride in decades. The move took only 2 taxi trips. All my possessions fit into 6 boxes and 2 suitcases. 23 years of my life, reduced to what one person could carry alone. But instead of feeling poor, I felt free, like those travelers who learn that happiness is not measured by what you carry, but by how lightly you can walk. My new apartment smelled of fresh paint and possibilities. Eleanor had arrived before me with flowers, a bouquet of white daisies that she placed in a glass vase on the small living room table. "Welcome to your new life," she said, hugging me with a maternal warmth I hadn't felt in years. That night, we cooked together. She brought ingredients to make a celebratory roast chicken, "to celebrate your independence," she said, and I prepared a rice pilaf with my mother's recipe. We ate on the floor, using boxes as a table, laughing like teenagers at a sleepover. "You know what the best part of starting over at our age is?" Eleanor asked me as she poured sweet iced tea into disposable cups. "What?" "That we already know who we are. At 20, you start over because you have no idea what to do with your life. At our age, you start over because you finally know exactly what you want and what you will not tolerate." She was right. For the first time in decades, I knew exactly who Carol Martinez was. Not Sophia's mother. Not the cleaning lady. Not the invisible woman who apologized for existing. I was a 58-year-old woman who had worked her whole life, who knew how to cook, who had stories to tell, who deserved respect and affection. The next day, I started looking for a job, not because I desperately needed the money. My savings could last me 3 months if I was careful, but because I wanted to feel useful again. Useful to the world, not just to one ungrateful person. I found a job at an elementary school in Astoria. It was a part-time position as an administrative assistant, but my real job was helping the children whose parents worked late and were late to pick them up. I would wait with them, give them a snack, and help them with their homework. The principal, Ms. Peterson, was a woman in her 40s who had been working in public schools for 20 years. "Do you have experience working with children?" she asked during the interview. "I raised one," I replied, But it didn't turn out so well, I'm afraid. She laughed. Well, sometimes other people's children behave better than our own. She had no idea how prophetic that sentence was. The children adopted me immediately. They called me Mrs. Carroll, with that spontaneous affection that only kids under 10 have. They told me their problems, showed me their drawings, and asked about my life as if my answers were the most interesting things in the world. There was one little girl in particular, Lucy, who was 8, whose mom worked double shifts at a clothing factory. She was always the last one to be picked up, sometimes as late as 7 at night. "Mrs. Carroll," she said to me one day while we were doing her math homework, "do you have any kids?" "I had a daughter," I answered. "But she's all grown up now and doesn't need me anymore." "And don't you miss her?" I thought about it. Did I miss Sophia? Or did I miss the idea of Sophia that I had carried in my head for years? "You know what, Lucy," I finally said. "I miss the little girl she was. But the person she became? Not so much. And is that okay?" "Yes, sweetie. It's okay not to miss people who hurt you, even if they're family." Lucy nodded with that wisdom children sometimes have for understanding things that adults take years to accept. 3 weeks after I moved, as I was waiting for Lucy's mom to pick her up, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Carol Martinez?" "Yes. This is Maria Gonzalez from Woman's Day magazine. Eleanor Vance gave us your contact information. We're doing a story on women who have started new lives after 50. Would you be interested in participating?" Eleanor had spoken about me to a journalist she knew from her time as a secretary. She had told my story without asking my permission, but with so much affection that I couldn't be angry. "I don't know if my story is that interesting," I said. "Believe me, it is. In our research, we've found that more and more women your age are making radical decisions to reclaim their autonomy. Your case could inspire many others." I agreed to the interview. Why not? For the first time in my life, I had a story that was entirely my own, and for the first time in years, I wanted to tell it. 6 months later, as I was making coffee in my small kitchen that smelled of cinnamon and vanilla, scents I had chosen, not ones that had been imposed on me, the intercom buzzed. It was 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning. No one ever visited me that early. "Mrs. Martinez?" I heard a nervous voice on the other end. "It's Sophia. It's Sophia Martinez. Could I come up?" My first reaction was panic. After 6 months of peace, of my own routines, of decisions that only affected me, my daughter's voice sounded like an ambulance siren in the middle of a quiet afternoon. "What for?" I asked, surprised at how firm my voice sounded. "I need to talk to you. Please. You." It wasn't Mom or even Carol. It was the formal you, as if we were strangers with a business appointment. I buzzed her into the building but didn't go down to meet her. If she wanted to talk to me, she would have to climb the 4 flights of stairs to my apartment. She would have to see the world I had built without her. When she knocked on my door, I waited a moment before opening it. In these past months, I had learned that I controlled the rhythm of my interactions. I no longer had to run to attend to anyone. The woman standing on my doorstep looked nothing like the successful executive I had last seen. Sophia was wearing faded jeans, a plain gray sweatshirt, and sneakers that had seen better days. Her hair, always perfect, was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wore no makeup and had deep, dark circles under her eyes. But the most striking thing was her eyes. They had lost that calculating coldness I had come to recognize. She looked human. "You can come in," I said, stepping aside. Sophia entered and looked around my small home with an expression I couldn't decipher. Her eyes lingered on the plants hanging in the windows, on the wooden table I had bought at an antique market, on the framed photographs, me with Eleanor at the Grand Canyon, me with the children from school, me alone, smiling on my balcony. "It looks nice," she murmured. "Cozy, thank you. Coffee?" "Yes, please." I served 2 cups in the earthenware mugs I had bought at a craft fair upstate during a weekend trip with Eleanor. Sophia took hers with both hands, as if she needed the warmth. We sat in my small living room, where the second-hand sofa I had reupholstered myself with a floral fabric felt more comfortable than any designer furniture. "How did you find me?" I asked. "Eleanor Vance," she replied. I looked her up after I read the article. The article, The interview with Woman's Day had come out 3 months ago. It's never too late to start over. The story of Carol Martinez. The headline read. They had used a photo of me smiling on my balcony with the plants in the background. I looked happy, genuinely happy. Did you read the whole article? 3 times, she admitted. I also read all the comments. Hundreds of women telling similar stories. Mothers who had been discarded by ungrateful children. Ungrateful children. Interesting that she used that phrase. And? I asked, taking a sip of my coffee. And I realized that I was the villain in all of those horrible stories. She fell silent for a moment, looking down at her hands. The company went bankrupt, she finally said. The investors discovered inconsistencies in my financial reports. It wasn't anything illegal, just optimistic. Very optimistic. They sued me for misleading information. I'm sorry, I said, and was surprised to realize that I truly meant it. Not for her, but for the version of her that had once existed. I lost everything. The apartment, the car, the international contracts. Forbes took my article off their website. My friends, well, it turns out they weren't friends. They were business contacts. And where are you living now? With a friend from college, on her couch. I'm working at a call center while I look for something better. A call center. The girl who had been ashamed of me cleaning offices was now working in a call center. Why did you come to tell me this, Sophia? She looked up, and for the first time in years, I saw the little girl she had once been. Vulnerable, scared, in need of love. Because when I lost everything, the only person I thought of was you. Not my business contacts. Not my so-called friends. You. Me? The woman who was always there when I fell. The one who never judged me. Never turned her back on me. Never made me feel like I had to earn her love. I felt something stir in my chest. It wasn't the old impulse to protect and rescue her. It was something smaller but more real. Compassion. The night I read your article, she continued, I cried for hours. Not because I had lost my company or my money. I cried because I realized I had lost the only truly valuable thing I had. A mother who loved me unconditionally. Sophia. No, she interrupted. Let me finish. I need to say this. For the past few months, I've been going to therapy. Not because anyone recommended it, but because I couldn't understand how I had become so cruel to the person who loved me most. Therapy. That was new. And what did you discover? That I have severe self-esteem issues. That my whole life I've been trying to prove to the world that I'm worth something because deep down I've always felt insignificant, and that the only way I knew how to feel big was by making other people feel small. She wiped away tears with the sleeve of her sweatshirt. Starting with you. The easiest person to hurt because I knew you would love me no matter how horrible I was. And now what? I asked. Do you expect me to fix your life again? No, she replied immediately. I didn't come to ask for anything. I came to offer you something. What? A real apology. Not a sorry, but you were also to blame apology. A complete apology with no buts or explanations. She took a deep breath before continuing. Carol Martinez, I am so sorry for all the pain I caused you. I'm sorry for wasting your love, your sacrifice, your time. I'm sorry for treating you like trash when you were the most valuable thing in my life. I'm sorry I was so selfish that I preferred to invent a dead mother, rather than honor the living mother who had given me everything. Tears were now streaming down her face unchecked. I'm sorry I never said thank you once in 25 years. I'm sorry I was incapable of appreciating what I had until I lost it. And I'm sorry that you had to wait until you were 58 to finally be happy for the first time in your life. I was quiet for a long time, processing her words. The apology sounded real, pained, as if it came from a deep place that had been buried for decades. What do you want from me, Sophia? Nothing, she said. I just wanted you to know that I've changed, that I'm changing, that I finally understand the damage I did. And you expect everything to go back to the way it was? No, she shook her head. I know that's impossible. I broke something that can't be fully repaired. I just hope that one day you can forgive me. Not so we can have a relationship like before, but so that you can have peace. I got up and walked to the window overlooking the park. The children were already playing soccer while their mothers chatted on the benches. A normal, everyday, beautiful scene. I already forgave you, I said, without turning around. Really? 3 months ago. Not for you. For me. Because holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. I turned to face her. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. And it definitely doesn't mean going back to the way things were. I understand. Do you? Because I need you to understand that the woman you knew, the one who put up with everything, the one who lived only to please you, that woman doesn't exist anymore. I'm Carol now, not Sophia's mom. Carol. I like Carol, she said with a small but genuine smile. She looks much happier. We talked for 2 more hours. She told me about her therapy, about her job at the call center, about how she had to learn to live on a normal person's budget. I told her about my job at the school, about my trips with Eleanor, about the painting class I had started taking on Thursday afternoons. When she left, she hugged me at the door. A short, respectful hug, without the possessive desperation of before. "Can I call you sometime?" she asked. "Just to talk, so you know how I'm doing." "You can try," I said, "but I'll decide if I answer." Understood. That night, as I prepared my dinner, pasta with vegetables, something simple that I liked, I reflected on the day. I hadn't felt the urge to rescue her. I hadn't offered to lend her money or let her come live with me. I hadn't fallen into the trap of becoming her personal savior again. I had seen an adult woman facing the consequences of her decisions, and I had responded with compassion, but also with boundaries. 3 months later, Sophia calls me every couple of weeks. Short, respectful conversations. She tells me about her progress in therapy. I tell her stories about the kids at school. We aren't mother and daughter in the traditional sense, but we aren't enemies either. We are 2 women who once lived together and are now learning to respect each other from a distance. And I, for the first time in my adult life, am completely happy. Have you ever experienced something similar? Or do you know someone who has gone through a situation where a mother's love wasn't valued until it was too late? Tell me your experience in the comments. And if this story touched your heart, leave a like and subscribe to the channel so this message can reach someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes, freedom begins when we stop begging for the love we deserve to receive for free.